Hello, OSJ. I'm Trayton Dansby, your 2019-2020 State President, here to talk with you today a little bit about Robert's Rules of Order. So, let's get started. One of the reasons we use Robert's Rules in OSGA is because of the core principle that the minority must be heard, but the majority will prevail. So, as long as two people, somebody that makes the motion and somebody that seconds, wants to have a conversation, then we'll sit down and have the conversation. However, just because we talk about something doesn't mean necessarily we take action or we do it. That's where the majority prevails comes in. At least 50% plus one of attendees at Congress have to agree on something for us to adopt it, for it to then go to my desk to sign or veto. Another part of Robert's Rules is the notion that you only do one thing at a time. So we'll only be having one conversation at a time. We'll only be on one resolution at a time, and we take our time going through it. The reason we do that is to make sure that we're thorough and we have as much as we need to decide how we're going to take action on whatever's been presented to the floor. So that way it keeps everyone focused and not wondering if there's two different things going on at once. So when you're using Robert's Rules, make sure you're only handling one thing at a time. Throughout Congress, you'll hear different types of voting, and that's because the chair gets to decide what form of voting we use whenever it's time to suspend the rules, to go back in time, to add or adopt amendments, or to even vote on the bill as a whole. One type of voting is voice vote. So the chair might call for all those in favor say aye, all those opposed nay. However, the issue with that one is if you're not 100% certain, then we have to go to a different type of voting. So another kind of voting is hand vote. That one's a really sheer, easy one that you just count how many hands are up whenever they say yay or no. Another type of voting is unanimous consent. Unanimous consent is best used for whenever you're wanting to move fast. So the chair will do something along the lines of, I'll propose that by unanimous consent, without objection, 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 so is the order. And if nobody says objection during that time, then it's just assumed that everyone else is on board. It adopts unanimously. Another type of voting is roll call vote. So roll call vote is used at the end of talking about a bill or resolution, and that's whenever the secretary will read off the last name and then the member just hollers out yes, no, or abstain. This is a really great system to use because it keeps your members accountable and it lets the public know how their representatives voted. However, it does take a little bit of time to go through every single name. That's why we only use it whenever we're adopting or denying resolutions. The last type of voting is ballot voting. We use ballot voting for our elections and typically nothing else, mainly just because of the amount of time it takes to prepare ballots, to pass them out, and to count them. However, if there's an issue that needs to be taken up by ballot, you can do something as simple as handing out pieces of paper for everyone to write down how they're voting on and fold it up in a cup and pick them out. That just takes a lot more time than some of the other types of voting. That's why we only use those for election. Throughout Congress or throughout Robert's Rules, if you ever get lost in the process or confused about what exactly is going on, there's types of shoutable motions, which means that you can just interrupt the speaker, just shout it out. You don't have to be recognized, just yell it from the floor. Those are like on information, so if you're curious about, you need some information or you need some more clarification about what we're doing, you can use that. On a learning moment, so if you're trying to figure out, how would I get this accomplished? Just stand up and say on a learning moment, and then we'll walk through the process of how to do that. If the chair breaks a rule and you think they did something wrong, shout out on order. And that basically means you broke a rule, we need to talk about that. The process we use in OSGA to adopt resolutions we start by letting the author explain. So author's explanation. They stand up, they get a certain amount of time to explain why they wrote a resolution, why it's a good idea, why you should vote for it. Right after that, we'll move into time for questions. Now, time for questions is just time for questions. You cannot make debates, you cannot make motions, you're just standing up and asking questions. It's one question at a time, and to obtain the floor to ask the question, you just simply stand up, raise your placard, and let the president's clerk write your name down. Whenever it's your time, the chair will call out your name, and then that's whenever you stand up and ask your question. Right after we're done with time for questions, the floor opens. So as soon as the gavel falls, as time as questions has elapsed, members are able to stand up, raise their placard, and wait to be called on. The chair will pick out somebody to call on, and they're able to make a motion. So they can make a motion to go back in time for questions. They can make a motion to move an amendment that was submitted. They can make a motion to go into debate, or they can make a motion to just go right to a vote. After that motion's been made and seconded, then we'll take a vote on that motion, and then if it's at least a majority of people want to do that, that's the next step we'll do. After we've had the opportunity to debate, go back in time for questions, or move amendments, we'll eventually move into the vote of final passage. So during the vote of final passage, everyone goes back to their seat and just waits for the secretary to call out their name to cast their vote. At this point, this is whenever the resolution dies or goes on. It has to get at least 50% plus one, and if it's a tie, then the chair gets to vote. Otherwise, the chair does not get a vote. After it's been adopted, it goes to my desk to be signed or vetoed. I hope this gave you some good information for Congress or even to adopt for your own SGA. Robert's Rules is a great tool to use, but just remember, whenever you're using Robert's Rules of your own SGA, you don't have to be as strict as we are at Congress. Use the version of Robert's Rules that works best for your group. Adopt it, make it your own, and see what works best for you, because Robert should never hinder the process. Robert should help the process. Thank you all so much, and I hope to see you at Congress and other future OSGA events. See you later.